In this video, I'm gonna show you how to get and update stock market data automatically. Hi, I'm Rafaela from CrateDB. If you're having trouble keeping your stock market data up to date, I have a solution for you. I'm gonna show you exactly how to automate the stock market data collection and storage. And after this video, you'll actually be able to automate Python tasks using Airflow. So, let's have a quick overview of what we're going to do today. We have a goal to regularly update stock market data. And to achieve this goal, we can divide it into tasks, like download the data, then prepare this data, and finally store this data. We can organize these tasks in a workflow, and we want to schedule runs for this workflow, let's say every day or once a week or every 2 hours. And we also want to observe the results from this workflow execution. So in other words, we want to orchestrate the workflow, and Airflow is a tool for that. Today, this is what we'll do. We want to store our data. So we're going to start CrateDB and create a table to store our data. And then to orchestrate the workflow, we're going to create an Airflow project. We're going to establish the connection to CrateDB. And once we have our Airflow project, we're going to write these tasks in Python as nodes in a DAG, direct acyclic graph. More to that coming later. And finally, we're going to set a schedule for this workflow and we're done. So let's start with the setup. I'm going to show you how to do it on a Mac machine. And before we start, just make sure you have Homebrew and Docker Desktop installed. And you can find the links to both of them in this video's description. We start by running CrateDB because this is where we are storing our data. So we run CrateDB using Docker. And how do we do that? Well, it's very easy. I'll just copy the Docker command from the CrateDB installation page and then run this command in the terminal. The link to the installation page is in this video's description. And if you have any questions on how to run CrateDB for the first time, you can check out the video description for 2 links. First, the Getting Started video tutorial for CrateDB and also the documentation for getting started. So I have here the Docker command to run CrateDB. I'm gonna run it and I get an error that my port 5432 is busy. So how do I fix that? I just change here the port to the next one that is free, in this case 5433, press enter, and CrateDB is running. Awesome. So now we can interact with CrateDB with the admin UI. To do that, you go to your browser and type localhost column 4200. And here we have the admin UI. So let's create a table to store our data. And today I'm particularly interested in the adjusted close values for the stocks. So this table is going to store the date, the ticker, and the adjusted close value. And I'm going to set the closing date and the ticker as the primary keys for the table. I hit submit and the table is created. Now you can check it out by going to the table browser. It's empty, but it's there, and that's everything we need to do right now for the database. So I can close my browser and go back to the terminal. Let's install Astronomer now. You want to open a new terminal tab, and we're going to use Homebrew to install it. So you write brew install astro and run this command. And if you have any questions regarding this, please check out our description for the documentation for Airflow and Astronomer. So now that Astro is installed, let's create our first Airflow project. Before anything else, I'm going to create a new directory called Astro Project, and I'm going to cd to this new directory. And inside the directory in the terminal, I run astro dev init. And this initializes the directory with a skeleton for the Airflow project. So we have the DAGs, we have include, we have the Astro, Docker file, packages, and so on. And this has some default settings for Airflow. For example, the Postgres server is set up to listen on port 5432, which you already know is busy, and the web server is set up to listen on port 8080. So if these ports are unavailable, you can change them, and I will show you how. So let's do some less adjustments before we start actually writing our DAG. So we have our table in CrateDB that is going to store the financial data, and we have the Python tasks running in Airflow. So now to connect CrateDB and Airflow, we're going to add the CrateDB credentials as a connection string to the .env file. So you want to open this .env file in a text editor like VS Code or whatever you prefer, and add this following line with the user crate and password null. So this is the connection string to connect to CrateDB if you're running CrateDB with Docker. And here notice that I'm using port 5433, which is the one I set up in the Docker command to run CrateDB. So if you changed like I did, you want to use the port you changed to, otherwise just use 5432 because this is the default one. Now, if the ports for the web server or Postgres are unavailable, you can change them in the .astro and then config.yaml file. So if the 8080 port for the web server is busy, change it, for example, to 8081. And if the 5432 port is busy for Postgres, you can change it, for example, for 5435. And now I swear, this is the last adjustment. Just open the Docker file and check the URL, because if it ends with buzzer on build, just erase the buzzer part so it becomes just on build. And you want to do this to avoid an error when starting Airflow. So we're done with the last adjustment. Let's head back to the terminal and run docker build kit 0 astro dev init. And once Airflow runs, you're going to see the credentials to log into the Airflow UI. And you can access this UI in the localhost column 8081 with the login credentials admin and the password admin as well. In the Airflow UI, we see our DAGs, but you might be asking, what is a DAG? DAG is short for Direct Acyclic Graph. A graph, what is it? It's made out of nodes and edges. And in Airflow, the nodes are the tasks. But a node does not stand by itself. It's connected to others. It depends on others, and other depends on it. So the dependencies are the edges of the graph. They connect the nodes and then make up the DAG structure. And direct acyclic means that basically we want to set the tasks, the nodes, to run one after the other without cycles to avoid deadlocks. And we bring the DAG to life by writing these tasks, the nodes, in Python. And we do that with the help of Airflow operators and Python modules. And this is basically what you need to know to write your own DAG. So let's move on and create a file for this DAG. So you want to create a .py file in the Astro project DAG folder. Call it, for example, financialdag.py. And this file is going to have the following structure. First, we're going to import the operators and the Python modules. Then we're going to declare the functions and the tasks. And finally, we're going to set the DAG and the dependencies between the tasks. So for the operators and modules, we use the Postgres operator to connect to CrateDB. And we also import the Airflow decorators to define the DAG and the tasks in a simpler way. And now come the modules. So we're going to import the datetime and pendulum to set up the schedule, yfinance to download the financial data, pandas and JSON to manipulate the data later on. And don't forget to add these modules to the requirements in the project folder like so. So save this requirements file and we're done with the operators. Now let's move on to declaring the tasks. So in our workflow we have 3 tasks: download, prepare, and insert data. Let's start with the first one, download yfinance data. So I want to tag it as a task with the @task decorator and give it a timeout. And now the parameter for this function is the date to download the financial data from. If you pass it as ds_none as a parameter, it means today's date. And for other scheduled dates, we can use ds_add Like to get yesterday's date, you can set yesterday equals Airflow, macros, ds add, and then ds minus 1. If you want it 10 days ago, ds minus 10. So what we also need is an array of tickers to download data from. For example, I'm going to use the Apple, Amazon, Meta, and Tesla tickers. And now we're going to call the yfinance download function. The parameters are first the tickers array, and then we want to set the start date as our date, for example, yesterday, and we save the result in data. And what is data here? Data is a data frame full of data about these stocks, for example, high, low, volume, dividends, and so on. But today, as I said, I'm focusing on the adjusted close value, so I'm going to filter with the adjusted close key. And then, finally, I want to return the data in JSON instead of a data frame. And why do I do that? Because in Airflow, the tasks talk to each other with a mechanism that is called XCOM. And XCOM does not work with data frames, but it does work with strings, for example. And this is why I pass the data as JSON to the next task, which is prepare the data. So what do I want here? I want to take the downloaded data, turn it into a list of dictionaries where each dictionary has the right closing date, ticker, and adjusted close values to insert in CrateDB. So I'm going to write a function, prepare data, getting the data as a parameter, and I transform back the data from JSON to data frame because it's easier to manipulate. So I'm going to get each row of data and make a dictionary with the values where each key is the name of a column in CrateDB. And I append each dictionary to my dictionaries list and finally return the dictionaries list. Now we have the prepared data to insert, so let's write the insert task. So we have a list of dictionaries and we want to run the insert tasks for each of them. And this is where the expand method comes in handy. What Airflow does here is like defining a task in a loop. It will create n copies of the task, one for each input. So to write this task, I'm going to call it import data, getting the prepared data as the input. And I'm going to return the Postgres operator with the connection ID, CrateDB connection. This is the name we gave in the connection string in the .env file. And we have the SQL statement to insert into our SP500 table. And in the end, I write expand with the parameters equals the prepared data. So now we have a task that executes the insert statement for each row we downloaded from yfinance. And therefore, we have all three tasks or nodes for our DAG. So what is missing? Which task comes first? Which comes next? We have to connect these nodes, and we do that by setting dependencies. So let's write the main execution method. This method wraps up everything. We call it financial data import, and we store the downloaded data in yfinance data. We pass this yfinance data to prepare data task and store the result in prepared data. And finally, we pass the prepared data to the import data task and store the result again in imported data. So now I have called all tasks. Let's set the execution order, aka the dependencies. And for that, we use the bit shift operator. So I'm going to set yfinance data, bit shift, prepare data, bit shift, import the data. And this method is done. And all there's left is to put the DAG all together. Then we have the DAG decorator. So you open brackets. So you set a schedule for this DAG, for example, daily or weekly. And you set a start date for the first run of this DAG. However, if the start date is before the current date, Airflow will try to backfill the missed DAG runs. So if you don't want that to happen, you want to set up catch-up as false. Now close the brackets, and here we're going to place the main function, financial data import, we just wrote. And in the last line, after financial data import, just call the financial data import function, and your DAG is ready. So save it, and let's go back to the terminal. because we want to kill the Docker containers that are running Airflow and run Airflow again. You can do that by running docker ps, checking out which containers are from Airflow, kill all of them, and then run Airflow again. So now Airflow is running again. Let's go back to the Airflow UI. And you should see now the DAG in the DAGs tab. So next to the DAG's name, we have a toggle for pause and unpause the execution. And if you click now on the DAG's name, you can see different views for the DAG. For example, if you click on graph, you're gonna see the nodes and the edges we just wrote. And if you go to the grid view, you can click on the squares to see the execution details. So now let's trigger the DAG and see what happens. Okay, so now in the grid we have all green squares, which means success. And this means the data is imported to CrateDB. So let's check it out. I'll go back to the CrateDB admin UI at localhost 4200 and go to the Tables tab, select our SP500 table. I click on Query Table, Submit Query, and I see the results. So basically, if you leave the DAG active, it will automatically update your financial data for you. And from now on, you can access the financial data in CrateDB and use it as you like. And now we come to the end of our tutorial. I hope you have learned something new today. If you have any questions, reach out to us at community.crate.io. Our community is an open space where we discuss everything CrateDB, we stay connected, get help, and we can contribute too. If you have not tried CrateDB yet, there's a link in the description to try it out for free. Thank you for watching. See you in the next tutorial. Bye!